Hello everybody, today I just wanted to go over the Zoo Druid Earthern Bulwark build guide that I did to clear tier 100. So the main thing with this build is we're utilizing Great Staff of the Crone with Pack Leader and with Nature's Fury and Symbiotic Aspect. So this turns our Claw into a Storm skill, and it also allows us to use Claw, which has the highest lucky hit coefficient, right? So it's going to proc our Nature's Fury as well as our Pack Leader a lot, so we'll just be resetting all of our cooldowns constantly, because when Nature's Fury key passive triggers a free skill, your non-ultimate cooldowns of the opposite type are reduced by 3 seconds, and all Nature's Fury does is whenever you cast either an Earth or a Storm ability, it just gives you a chance to cast a same ability of the opposite type in that category, right? And then whenever that triggers, it makes your cooldowns of the opposite type, regardless of the category, get reduced. So, yeah, not bad. And then that's going to all get loaded into the Barber, which is then going to do a nice explosion, and it will do tons and tons of damage. Now, this right here is going to be the tier 100 setup, but I will also show you what to do if you are not doing tier 100s and you're just kind of leveling up. So, that being said, let's go ahead and hop on into it. So we have Aspect of Might, gives us some damage reduction. You're going to want Ranks of Wolves, Poison Creeper, Ravens, and percent total armor. On the chest piece and legs, you're going to want damage reduction from close, damage reduction while fortified, percent total armor, and damage reduction from enemies that are poisoned. Now, when it comes to the aspect on the chest piece, I use Earthguard aspect because I was doing 100 push, so I put Disobedience on my necklace so I could get more armor for damage reduction. However, if you are not doing like a tier 100 push and you're just leveling up or something like that, you can just take the Disobedience, put it on the chest piece, and then I would recommend moving Alpha to your necklace, or you can move Symbiotic to your necklace as well if you want to do that. It's not really my preference, but I do see some people doing that because it helps get you more CDR with the Earthern Bulwark, so not too bad. And then for the leg aspect, I am using the Cyclone Armor one. So what it does is it just makes it to where instead of just only getting non-physical, you also get physical. So you just get 10% damage reduction from Cyclone Armor. So yeah. Then on the gloves, we're going to be using Aspect of the Alpha. This is going to turn our wolves into werewolves and increase their damage by 100%. Now, the main reason why we use this aspect is because we have a lot of effects like damage reduction while poisoned and stuff like that. So having things that can actually, you know, keep everything's poisoned, so we can get things like heightened malice and all that stuff up, is generally speaking pretty good. And on top of that, the active damage, especially like lower, so the lower level you are, the stronger the companions are really going to be, because the active damage is just that's really where all the damage is. So we do go ahead and pack in points into this just to help get a bunch of damage, because you'll find that, you know, the active portions on it plus the Barber actually do make it, you know, hit in the multiples of millions. So it's really not too bad. I will say this though, when it comes to playing for their passive damage on the companion skills, the passive damage on all the companion skills is still really, really low, even with all the buffs and stuff like that. All the damage is in the active, so don't expect to really see a whole lot until until like you get resets. That's why we really focus on the resets, because really all the damage for companions is in the active. So you're going to want crit chance, lucky hit chance, attack speed, and then if you're putting points into Claw, which you can do if you want to go like the pure Zoo Druid build. You can go the critical strike damage with werewolf skills like I have here. However, I would say going something like willpower is probably better if you are not doing that, right, and you're just going the 1 point into it. So, and you know, doing more of like the Earthern Bulwark thing. So after that, going on to the boots, we're going to have movement speed for 4 seconds after killing an elite. We're going to have percent total armor while in werewolf form, damage reduction while injured, and then you can do the dodge chance like I have here, but I don't know, I'm thinking willpower or something for your Paragon is probably better. The dodge chance, I just put it on just to try to test it out. It's okay, I guess, but not really anything to write home about. The percent total armor while in werewolf form, we do actually have that up a lot, because like if you try to like weave a claw in between each of your abilities, which admittedly is not like necessarily that easy to do, because you know, it really, you know, kind of changes the playstyle to where it's very weavy, I guess, if that makes sense. But you do actually keep that up, the 14% armor up, quite a lot. whenever everything's on cooldown and you're waiting for a reset to happen. So it's not too bad. It's not really too bad in this. So then we have Great Staff of the Crone. So Claw is now a Storm skill and also casts Storm Strike at 147%. So now, real quick, I just want to go a little bit more in depth on why specifically this gets so many resets. So if you look here, Claw has a 58% lucky hit chance. And if you compare that to other abilities, right, because if you're not familiar with how lucky hit chance works, you take this right here, it says critical strikes have up to 20% chance to reset the cooldowns of your companion skills, right? So you take the 58% here and you multiply that by the 20%, and that's going to give you 12%, and that's going to be your actual, right? So when you compare that to the other abilities, right, and you look at like Lightning Storm, it has a 17%, Tornado has a 9%, so you're getting like a 2% chance. Pulverize is a 29%. Shred has a 23%, right? Earth Spike has a 41. Wind Shear 23. Maul 35, right? You can see that, just the lucky hit chance is really low, but on Claw, since it's a single target ability, it's actually pretty high. Not only that, it also casts Storm Strike. So you're getting two abilities for one cast, right? So your action economy is really high. And then on Claw has a 15% chance to attack twice. So that means you're going to have these moments where you cast Claw once, but then all of a sudden 4 abilities go off, right? So that's pretty damn good. And then when you factor that in with Nature's Fury, because you have a chance to cast the opposite type. So for example, you would cast like Earth Spike or something like that. Then you potentially could have 5 abilities go off, right? Like you don't know. Like you could just have this crazy chain of abilities go off, right? And every single time it hits, it's pretty good. It's just another chance at a crit, which gives us, obviously another opportunity in our like statistical distribution to proc pack leader or whatever, right? So it's just really, really solid. Okay, but yeah, that's that. We don't really use it for the claw damage. If you're not doing Earthern Bulwark or anything like that, and you're just doing the Zoo Druid, then the claw damage is a little bit relevant. I do like to put the 5 points into the claw, but in the hybrid version, I don't really recommend it. So, moving right along to the necklace. So we are using the Barber as the Wrathful Heart. We're going to go ranks to companion skills, ranks to call the wild passive, damage reduction from enemies that are poison, or percent total armor. Now, another thing you can do, and I like to focus more on the companion side of things, that's why I have my amulet more set up for companions, but it probably would be more damage if you were to change like ranks of companion skills to like Envenom passive or something like that to get 30% increased critical strike damage. That would be more of a benefit for, that'd be a pretty big benefit for your, for both your companions as well as your Earthern Bulwark, right? But if you're lower level and stuff like that, the ranks of companions is still totally fine. You'll do just fine. But yeah, that's just something you can think about changing if you do find an amulet that has that. So next up, we are going Aspect of the Stampede. This just gives us another companion, so we get another Raven, we get another Wolf, and we get another Poison Creeper. It also increases the damage of all of our companion skills, which is pretty nice. You want to go vulnerable damage, max life, critical strike damage, and critical strike chance. The max life is kind of a flex spot. It's just kind of whatever you want. You can go max life. You can go barrier generation. That'll increase the damage of your Earthern Bulwark. Or you can go lucky hit chance. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of going the lucky hit chance. I mean, I have it on this ring mainly because I just haven't really found any other ring that's really all that great that has the right kind of malignant heart socket on it that I need. So, yeah. Unfortunately, so I have it on here, but I mean, preferably I'd probably rather have something like this or swapping that max life over to barrier regen. Okay, we're going to be using the Brutal Heart of Revenge, so this is going to give us 20% damage reduction. That's the reason why we use it. The whole suppressed damage thing is cool, but it's really not that great. It only does 15,000. That damage is going to fall off really fast. It'll be probably good in like World Tier 3 maybe, but the damage will fall off pretty quick once you get into World Tier 4. So next off, we're using the Crashdown aspect. So you do want to use the aspect of Aspect of Natural Balance. So what that does is it gives you your Earth skills critical strike damage when you cast a Storm skill, and it gives your Storm skills crit whenever you cast an Earth skill. So if you're lower level and you're running Storm's Companion specifically, you want to run that because it's going to benefit your wolves more, because your wolves are going to also become a storm skill. And it also just has a higher critical strike damage multiplier on it, I believe, than this. But Crash Stone Band's fine. I just don't have a natural balance. That's the reason why I'm not using it. But if you don't have natural balance, you can do Crash Stone Band. Because the cool thing about this one is you can get Crash Stone Band from your occultist. So if you don't have the natural balance, you can just use this in place of it, and that's totally fine. And then we are using the Moon Rage. This gives us a wolf companion and +3 ranks to our wolves to help make them do more damage. So real quick, if you are lower level, you can run Storm's Companion. I highly suggest this. Unless you are doing like tier 75 plus, I would recommend running Storm's Companion in your pants slot and then changing like your Cyclone Armor over to like Blood Howl or something like that. Okay, as this just gives a lot of damage to your wolves, turns them into a storm skill, so it just gives them a ton of benefit from like from your Paragon for like storm abilities and stuff like that, and nature magic ability, and like nature magic ability increase, stuff like that. So it's pretty good. And the whole thing with the Storm Howl ability, what that does is it turns their dash into a teleport, so it becomes a lot easier to hit their damage. I mean, they did fix the bug where they were like stuck in the air. That doesn't really happen anymore. So from a functionality standpoint, you still can use them just fine without Storm's Companion, but this is just a huge buff to your wolves. If you do find it, it's definitely pretty good, and I highly would recommend it. So we are going damage reduction while fortified gems. Now you want to go max life gems if you're not doing, if you don't have like the symbiotic aspect and the Earthern Bulwark set up yet. You would rather want to go max life gems because you're going to find it a lot harder to stay fortified. Because moving right along, oh, and we're using the green gems in the weapon. So moving right along to the boons, because we're going to be using bolster. This is our main way of getting fortify, and if you don't have symbiotic aspect, this just isn't really that great. I mean, technically you could like cast Earthern Bulwark and then you could cast Cyclone Armor, right? And you know that would technically, since they're both defensive skills, it would give you 30% fortify, but it's still kind of meh. I don't know, I found that before I started using bolster and the Earthern Bulwark thing, it was kind of hard to keep fortify up all the time with the tools that I had access to. So and that also would mean too that you want to avoid getting the damage reduction while fortified and go something like just regular damage reduction or something like that in place of that until you get like the full setup going. So we're using Wariness, Avian Wrath, Pack Leader, Masochistic, and then Bolster. Alright, moving right along to abilities. So for our abilities, Claw, Enhanced Claw, Wild Claw, Storm Strike, Enhanced Storm Strike, Fierce Storm Strike, vulnerable, immobilized, chance to attack twice. So you can get like 4+ attacks on certain procs, like I said before, the Great Staff of the Crone. Earthen Bulwark, Enhanced Earthen Bulwark, and 8 Earthen Bulwark. I've maxed this out to 5 based on what I have researched. I'm not a Earthen Bulwark expert, but pretty much putting this at 5 is the max that it's actually going to benefit damage-wise. So if you do put points past this, it will increase the barrier, so I guess there's something to be said about that, but it doesn't really increase the damage. So, and I will say this from my testing, I can say that it does feel like it does more damage, or it does seem like it does more damage with 5 in it than with 1. So that being said, Cyclone Armor, Enhanced Cyclone Armor, Preserving Cyclone Armor. We're taking this just for the passive defenses, but like I said, if you are lower level, you can just take Blood Howl, Enhanced Blood Howl, Preserving Blood Howl, and then you can run the Storm's Companion. Then you would take Disobedience, put that on your chest piece, and then take Alpha and put that onto your necklace. Okay. So then we want to go Ancestral Fortitude, Vigilance. This is really good since we're resetting this so much. It's just pretty much a permanent 15% damage reduction buff. So that's just not bad. Really, you should be able to keep this up almost 100% of the time, if not 100% of the time, since you have 2 actives, right? So we're going to use Wolves, Enhanced Wolf Pack, Ferocious Wolf Pack. Now you might wonder why I don't go the attack speed route with this. So I was doing that before, but after the Barber got changed to where your group's damage does not go into the Barber anymore, that kind of nerfed the passive damage on, unfortunately, on companions. So they did that big buff to their passive damage, right? But then they did that, so now their passive damage doesn't actually benefit from like any heart in the game. I'm trying to think if there is one. There might be one, but like their passive damage really doesn't benefit from like any of the hearts anymore, or any of the Wrathful Hearts anymore. So like I feel like playing for the passive damage isn't really that great. Like and you'll see it in the footage that, you know, like whenever I'm doing like a barber proc, that their auto attacks are still hitting and still doing damage, even though the barber is in fact on the target. So for whatever reason it doesn't go in there, and that ended up being a pretty big nerf to the passive damage. That's also a big part of the reason why the passive damage just kind of sucks on these guys, right? It's because it doesn't have anything to enhance it like the barber and stuff like that. So we have Poison Creeper, Enhanced Poison Creeper, Ferocious Poison Creeper. Then we go Call of the Wild to get big bonus to damage for our companion skills. Ravens, Enhanced Ravens, Brutal Ravens. 2 additional Ravens will periodically attack the enemies, increases the passive damage by 40%. You could go Ferocious Ravens, but we already have so much, you know, access to Vulnerable that this is probably just going to be better overall. Overall I think Ravens is probably the worst companion skill, but you know, this is a Zoo Druid build, so we do run it. I will say this, the active isn't too bad, and I also think the active with this and Poison Creeper I think actually do more damage if you do Creeping Death potentially. So there is something to be said about that. You can run Creeping Death in if you go more of like the pure Zoo Druid build. I don't really think it's particularly that good with Earthern Bulwark. The Barber's probably going to be better, but for like if you're doing like a Poison Zoo Druid, Creeping Death is definitely viable. So Crushing Earth, Safeguard, Neurotoxin, and Envenom. This gives you a 30% increased crit buff. This gives you more access to Fortify whenever you hit with your Earthen Bulwark. Crushing Earth, a little bit of damage. Come down here. Defiance, Natural Disaster. Your Earth skills deal 8% increased damage to vulnerable enemies, and your Storm skills deal 8% increased damage to enemies that are stunned, immobilized, and knocked back. These become a lot better, and you can kind of spec into these, and like, because really, if you're at a lower level, you really could take Safeguard out and you could put it into Resonance and then wear Storm's Companion, and then you would have like 2 multipliers for your wolf damage. That's what I do whenever I'm not doing any kind of like high push stuff. So that is another little tech thing that you can do. And then we have Nature's Fury. The other option would be, if you don't have Symbiotic Aspect or something like that, is to go Ursine Strength, and the reason why is while healthy, deal 30% increased damage. You don't need to be in Werebear form to get this, and this is going to be really the only thing that actually benefits all your companion skills from your Keystone passive wise. Okay, moving on to Paragon, our last and final section here. So this is what my first tree looks like. So you go pick up this armor, stuff like this. I really like to stack max life because it seems like it's multiplicative, so you can get really high life totals. So then we go territorial. This gives us damage reduction, a little bit of damage. Move on up here. We go wilds. This is probably the biggest damage increase for our companions. It gives us 267% companion skill damage on top of an 80% increase to the passive portion of the companion skills, which makes me really sad when I see this, because like really I'm fairly certain that like if their passive damage went into the barber, it would just be so much better. But because they really do have a lot of multipliers, but I feel like the barbers, the fact that they just don't have a season theme to benefit from it, or their passive damage doesn't benefit from the season theme, whereas like all this other stuff does, it just, you know, makes it obviously a lot weaker in comparison. So that being said, moving right along, come up here, you can go to the left, get Nimble. Then you can get Exploit. This will give us vulnerable damage and a way to apply vulnerable, which is pretty good. Come over here. This is just to pick up more vulnerable damage. Come down here, pick up some critical strike damage. There's a lot of critical strike damage here to crowd controlled enemies, which things should all be crowd controlled, because when you poison them, you put a slow on them. So they should be crowd controlled because of the rabies virtually all the time. And then your Earth skills deal 30% increased damage to enemies afflicted by crowd control. Then you can come over here. Pick up Spirit. This is a 97% critical strike damage buff for all your abilities, which is pretty sweet. So, and it also gives you a damage amp. Come up here, pick up this nice damage to poison enemies. Pick up Heightened Malice. I like to swing down here and pick up the damage to poison enemies, but these points are kind of flexible. You could put these into whatever you want. If you wanted to, you could also take these points, I guess, and put them into so you can try to get like more territorial and stuff like that. Because I do believe there is a few. Yeah, like there's a couple. You could get this damage up a little bit more as well. But yeah, so moving right along, coming right on down to here, taking Undaunted. So wall fortified, you take up to 10% less damage, and you just do a bunch more damage while fortified. So moving back to the, if you don't have the symbiotic aspect or something like that, and you're just playing like the pure Zoo Druid, I would recommend going Guzzler instead. So then you just get damage while healthy. So that's that would be the other option here, I believe. Okay, but anyways, I think that's going to do it. That is the Paragon tree. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.